Donald Trump entering the week in a position he doesn't typically find himself in, with some of his most loyal backers low mo, as in low momentum, on spinning a bogus narrative about the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Brand new reporting in the Washington Post reveals that Team Trump was caught flat-footed by the reaction to the DOJ memo that attempted to pour cold water on the existence of bombshell revelations in the government's possession. Claims spread most convincingly and prolifically by the officials who now populate the highest levels of Trump's own administration. From that new reporting, quote, Donald Trump is increasingly frustrated with his administration's handling of the furor around the Jeffrey Epstein files, concerned that the saga's unabated domination of the news is overshadowing his agenda. That is according to two people familiar with his thinking. One person tells the Washington Post this, quote, this is a pretty substantial distraction. While many are trying to keep the unity, in many ways, the DOJ and the FBI are breaking at the seams. Many are wondering how sustainable this is going to be for all the parties involved, be it the FBI director or the attorney general. Well, perhaps the FBI director or the attorney general should have dialed back the promises they were making on television about the existence of lists and other evidence, given that they were appointed by a president who has made no secret about his belief that the main function of the FBI director and attorney general is now to protect him. We have shown you many of the clips of Dan Bongino and Kash Patel pushing, clamoring, screaming about the release of the Epstein files. Remember, it is Kash Patel who lashed out at House Republicans back in 2023 by saying this, quote, put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, end quote. Kash Patel also promised full transparency during his Senate confirmation hearing.
So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past and how we are going to countermand missing children and exploited children going forward.
Everything except release the Epstein material. And that was in January 30th of this year. Less than 1 month after Kash Patel said that in his confirmation hearing, his friend, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, goes on Fox News and says the Epstein client list is on her desk. 6 days after that, Bondi hands out binders to right-wing media personalities and influencers labeled The Epstein Files, Phase 1, a title that by definition implies that there are more phases, at least 2. All of this makes the July 7th memo declaring that there is nothing to see here. There was nothing. There was no client list. Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in prison. All that becomes all the more confounding, not to us, but to Trump's own allies and supporters. Politico reports this, quote, the administration seemed to want to put the issue to bed quietly with this relatively terse and unsigned joint DOJ-FBI memo. Case closed was the notion. So what happens? Why does the tone change? Wall Street Journal reports that sometime in May, Attorney General Pam Bondi tells Donald Trump that his name appears in the Epstein files multiple times. The mere mention of Donald Trump's name does not imply any wrongdoing, but Politico reports this, quote, it may have triggered a critical inflection point in the administration's handling of the issue and its public statements on the subject. Since the release of the memo, Donald Trump has lashed out, slamming the media for asking questions about Epstein, even though most of the questions and complaints are coming from his most vocal supporters, who are the most steeped in this story to begin with. And they're the ones who've been pushing. Here's what Trump said today.
Mr. President, you have said that you have not been briefed on the Epstein files, or your name has not appeared in the Epstein files. But doesn't the AG have to tell you if your name is...
Well, I haven't been overly interested in it. You know, it's a hoax that's been built up way beyond proportion. I can say this, those files were run by the worst scum on earth. They were run by Comey. They were run by Garland. They were run by Biden. and all of the people that actually ran the government, including the auto pen, those files were run for 4 years by those people. If they had anything, I assume they would have released it. The whole thing is a hoax.
Whole thing's a hoax. That's why I kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. Hoax. Doesn't even make sense in his world. He's even tried to dismiss the story as boring, and it is a lot of things. Gross, sordid, confusing, but boring is not one of those things. But most importantly, perhaps, none of this is working, really, for the first time. Even Trump's efforts on the Epstein issue itself, where he seems to be trying to get out of it, seem half-hearted and destined to really leave him where he is, which is politically stuck. And maybe that's by design as well. The DOJ pushing for the release of the grand jury transcripts of the case, which one judge has already rejected. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche's meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell has lots of people baffled. Here's what Chris Christie, who was once a big Trump backer, was in the running to be AG in the first Trump term, had to say about those meetings.
I have never seen this done, ever. The Deputy Attorney General runs the Department of Justice. They don't interview witnesses. And so I wonder, the first question that popped to my mind as Sarah and I were talking about this was, you know, whenever you're a line assistant or anyone who's interviewing a witness, you bring at least one agent with you, if not two. So there are a number of people taking notes, and there are witnesses there. We have heard nothing about whether Todd Blanche brought anyone with him to verify whatever he's going to report back as a third independent source. This is highly unusual. And if they're building a case for what? And against who? She's in jail for 20 years, and her co-conspirator is dead. So what exactly are they doing? It makes it look even worse. I think this is a bad political move for the White House on top of it. It makes it look like one of the people that is being accused of covering up, Todd Blanche, is now in charge of digging out the truth.
So when you've lost Chris Christie, that's where you are. Team Trump, unable to find their way out of a mess, very much of their own making when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, is where we begin again today. Puck News chief political columnist, MSNBC national affairs analyst John Heilemann is here. Also joining us, White House reporter for the Washington Post, Emily Davies. She's bylined on some of that fantastic reporting we just read from. And former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, MSNBC contributor Ben Rhodes is here. Heilemann, let me start with you. And Chris Christie has been a critic of Donald Trump's for many years now, but I haven't seen such pointed and specific criticism of this team at DOJ from him yet. But he asks a very pointed question there. What is Todd Blanche doing, if not seeming to engage in a cover-up from the highest echelons of the Department of Justice?
It's a very pointed question, Nicolle, and also a very unanswered question at this point. And it's a question that, as you will well remember, our friend Andrew Weissman raised on this program at the end of last week. And he made exactly the same point, I believe, on Friday, where he said, we have no idea if anybody was with Todd Blanche. Extremely unusual that Todd Blanche would be there. It made all the more unusual by the fact that Todd Blanche is not just the Deputy Attorney General, but also Donald Trump's former defense attorney. And the fact that we do not know at this hour whether anyone was in the room with him, and if someone was in the room with him, who that person was. And of course, it's fueled a lot of speculation, inference, suggestion, combined with Donald Trump waving off discussion, not waving off as in saying no, of course Ghislaine Maxwell will not be pardoned. I would never consider such a thing for a convicted child sex trafficker. No, Donald Trump twice has now been asked about it on Friday, and I believe asked about it today in Scotland, and both times has said, well, I have the right to do it. I mean, I haven't thought about it. No one's brought it to me, which is, TLDR of Donald Trump. Yeah, it's certainly on the table. I think that's a not unreasonable inference, and very easy to knock that down. So if you put those two things together, it suggests something very nefarious. Chris Christie didn't go quite that far in speculation as I just did, and as some have done, many have done. But that is where we're at right now. And I will say, well, we can get back to this later. I want to get back to some of your timeline, but I don't want to hog the air at the top here. But I do want to get back to the way these perceptions are playing out among Trump supporters and what we're hearing from them now. And it's not just that Trump can't get past this. It's that every time he tries to get past it, he's making it worse for himself. He's just ensnaring himself further in the web of suspicion and the sense of betrayal that a lot of his voters feel over this issue.